It is my great pleasure to introduce Darinda Sharp, whom I have had the luxury of knowing through Speaking Academy Mastermind. And so I know she's an excellent speaker, and she shares a love with all of us for the written word. It's obvious in that she works in a bookshop, amongst other things in her colorful past. And she has some words to share with us today about how do we keep writing and lots more. So over to Dorinda. I will mute myself. You are on.
Thank you, Rusty. So as I've been going through this talk, when I first put it together, I didn't know any of you. And I feel like after last night and today, I know a little bit about all of you. Of course, I knew Rusty and I'd met Ambika. And for those of you who don't know, Michelle and I have known each other since junior high school. So we go way back. But some of the ways I would start this thing I don't make sense anymore. So I'm going to wing it a little bit and just say that I'm convinced that all of you have felt this. I have a book in me. I know it. I know it in my bones. It's in me. But what many writers have trouble with is how do I get it out of me? And I think writers, for the most part, maybe by definition, are cerebral and internal and interior. And we like to think. And so I think one of the challenges writers have is to remember that you only have to do one thing to be a writer. Write. The only way your writing comes into existence is to write it. You can't think it. You can't, you can't wish it into existence. You can't contemplate it into existence. You can't organize it in your brain in so many ways and so many times that it comes to fruition. You have to put it down on paper. Now, whether that is pen to paper, pencil to paper, or typing it, or a combination, or speaking it into a dictation app that then puts it on paper, at some point you have to put it in a way that others can read it. And that's where I feel like we get hung up a lot of times is when do I write? Where do I write? How do I write? I know I have this thing to write, but how do I organize it so it's most effective? And I am here to say, just write. Writers, write. And it doesn't matter where or when or how much, or if you have your muse that day, or if you feel like it. Writers, write. So how many of you, and maybe it's even happened last night and today, how many of you have been writing something that you've been thinking about, you've been ruminating on, but you actually start writing about it and something new happens, something new comes to you? I see two hands. Is that it? Oh, there. Okay, good. It happens to me almost every time. I've been thinking about this and contemplating it and going through it. And then I start writing it and oh my gosh, there it is. And it happened with Ryan, who y'all have been hearing about. This story started out with a 40-year-old woman who works on political campaigns. And this is in no way a biography, but I spent a lot of time on political campaigns in the US, and they're just fun stories to tell. And I don't want to write a tell-all. I don't want to write a memoir. I don't want to tell anyone's dirty laundry, but there are some fabulous stories that happen on campaigns, and I wanted to tell them. And so I'm working on this, and someone in a writing group I was in says, so this character, is she writing a tell-all? And I'm like, no, she doesn't want to do that. And I'm like, so why is she telling the story? What's the inciting incident? And I don't know. And so I start writing, what is the inciting incident? Because, one of the blocks we have is sometimes I don't know what to write. I'm not going to write today because I don't know what to write. And so my challenge to you is at those times, go back and just write literally the words, I don't know what to write. I don't know what this is about yet. What could this possibly be about? And again, there's that magic that happens. And it really is, I think, writing is magic. And you become a story wizard. Maybe it's not an aqua wizard, Ambika, but it's a story wizard as you're writing. That these things happen, these connections are made in your brain, and they're you and they're there. But that's just how they're accessed, and there's no other way to access them but by writing. So I'm writing, what is this inciting incident? And sometimes it doesn't happen while you're writing. Sometimes it does happen after the fact. But Ryan, who y'all have been learning about, woke me up in the middle of the night and introduced himself to me. And he said, and I don't talk about this much, so just know that y'all are in the inner circle here when I tell you this. So this inciting incident that makes her tell her story is that she gets pulled off a presidential campaign the Saturday before Election Day because of an explosion in her hometown at a political rally. Now, why does this explosion happen? Because Ryan is trying to impress this girl. He's a photographer for his high school newspaper, and he thinks, I'm going to set this explosion. I'm going to cause a bunch of chaos. No one, he doesn't plan to hurt anybody, but he's going to cause this big, excitement and row and get away with it. But because of some circumstances, a fire develops under the stage explodes, it goes out into the audience during this political rally, and people have to be medevac to level 1 trauma units in 6 states. And then there's all this issue of what's going on. Is this a terrorist attack? Is it against this person running for office? Blah, blah, blah. So Ryan tells me all this in the middle of the night. So I just say that to tell you, I couldn't come up with that by thinking. I had to write it out. And the other thing I want to mention is that, the other place we get in our heads is, I don't have time. I don't have time to write. I need these 3 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours, and I don't have that. So I put this down for more than 10 years and didn't touch it because I didn't have time for it. And last September, I decided I was going to write 5 minutes a day. That's it. 5 minutes a day, wherever I was. Now, did it stay 5 minutes a day? No. Did it turn into 3 hours and 6 hours sometimes? Yes. But I only had to write 5 minutes a day. I didn't have to spend any more time than that. And if I didn't have more than 5 minutes a day, that was okay too, because writers write. And even if it's for 5 minutes a day, writers write. And so, you get into these funks. I don't have time. You have 5 minutes. I'm not feeling creative. Do it anyway. I don't have a good writing space. Do it where you are right now. Get out the note app on your phone in the grocery store line and write on your app. You're going to be in line for 5 minutes probably, right? Get your 5 minutes in there. It's too loud. It's too quiet. I don't have my candle and my tea and my favorite blanket. You don't need them for 5 minutes. You don't need the candle and the tea and the blanket. Just write, because that story's in you, and you're the only one who can tell it. It may be something you've experienced, these memoirs that are beautiful and heart wrenching and heart lifting are experiences you have to share, or it may be something you've learned that you're helping someone else get through because you've had the learned experience. Or, as in my case, it may just be something in your imagination, but it's in your imagination and not in anyone else's. Until you share it, no one else is going to experience it. And so I am imploring you to write. Please write your story so the rest of us can experience it. And I know it's scary. I get it. It's intimate. It's personal. This is a safe space. So we're sharing here, but we step out of the safe space and it gets a lot scarier. What if I fail? What if I succeed? What if I'm judged? Well, you're going to be judged. It's just part of it. But this world needs your writing. Every last one of you. And so I just want to ask one thing, since it's in you and it's only in you. What happens if it doesn't come out of you and you leave this world and that story goes with you? How does that feel? I don't like it. When I think about that, I get a little bit anxious to think that this story leaves with me. Even if it's garbage, even if it's horribly written, I think the story needs to get out there. And, maybe one day a better writer than me will redo it. Or maybe it'll spur something epic in someone else. But don't let it die with you. And there's one other thing that I would say in a different group, and I don't think it applies here, but I'm going to say it anyway, just because I want to share it for people that you may talk to later, other writers or would-be writers. Is that I would, in other groups, pose a question about, why aren't you writing? I don't think it applies here because everyone here is writing. But to those who aren't writing, maybe they don't want to be a writer. Maybe that's why they're not doing it. Maybe it's not fulfilling. Maybe it's better to be doing something else. Maybe the idea of getting that story out of them, if that story leaving this world with them isn't anxiety producing. And all of that's okay. We're not all writers. Not everyone has a story to get out of them. And I don't say that to discourage anyone, but only to say, if this is not something that brings you joy, if this is not something that fills your soul, the world has too little fulfillment and too little joy. So spend your time on that, not wringing a story out of you if it's just the most miserable part of your day every day. That's okay too. So that's not as discouragement. It's just go for the joy and the fulfillment. And if writing doesn't bring you that, that's not to say it isn't hard. It is hard, but the hard stuff's fulfilling too. But if it doesn't bring you fulfillment, then do something that does. And for this group, I think that's telling stories. So that's all I have. Thanks for listening.
Yay, jazz hands for Darinda. And I think that's very true, because maybe writing might not be the way that we want to get our story out. Because I think that everyone does have a story. We all have something to share. We've all learned things. So maybe we want to get out another way. Maybe we want to write song lyrics. Maybe we want to sing. Maybe we want to act. Maybe we want to perform. Maybe we want to be, a speaker on stage and not write. but yes, I think the people that come here write because it gives them joy. And I think we read because it's joyful to sit down with a book. So you asked some questions there, what keeps us from writing and judgment. I wanted to just see how many people feel that judgment might be one of the things that have kept you back. I mean, Wavy, you said last night that I never judged you. And I think that is something that is maybe one of the best gifts we can give ourselves, is to find that one person that doesn't judge us so we can share. So what held you back before this last year, Whaley?
Held me back, meaning not writing, or?
Yeah, what held you back from writing your memoir? Because you know that you're meant to do something grand and beautiful. So what held you back before?
Before, okay.
Yeah.
Before was the self-doubt of language ability. I always had this limiting belief that English is my second language. Now, actually, that's false. That's completely false. I speak English every single day. I read in English. I do speak Chinese to my husband and to my children, but it's just an excuse. So also, it's identity. I feel like I never saw myself as a writer. So I feel like a writer is somebody who who loves sitting down and write. And I'm an outgoing speaker. I'm an entrepreneur. I build businesses, but I can have multiple identities, right? So I've enjoyed being a writer for the last year and a half, and I think I will continue to carry this identity because I do enjoy it. Like Darinda said, I feel when I'm sitting down in front of my computer and things just pour out of me, it feels peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And insights come.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you first. So now, questions from anybody else. What touched you? What touched a spot in you, or a question you have for Darinda? Go ahead, just unmute yourself and speak out.
Okay, I would like to know, do you have to have a layout of where you're going to put the information that you're writing about?
Do I personally?
Or because there's different places that your thoughts, like if you're in the lineup at the grocery store and the thought comes to you, where do you stick it in, or how do you lay that out?
I keep a lot of documents in a folder electronically. It's what I do. And the great thing about the electronic age we're in now is that I can type something on my phone and email it to myself. And when I get home, drop it in the right place. I know people who use things like Evernote to organize what they're writing.
But that's what I mean. Like, how do you know where you want to put it?
I don't always. In fact, sometimes when I think I'm writing one thing, I get going and I realize, oh my gosh, that's not the story. This is another story. And that actually happened to me when I was writing this conversation between Ryan and his mom. It's the same story, but I hadn't realized until then that his mom and the other protagonist, they grew up together. I knew the families were from the same town. I knew they knew of each other, but it turns out these two women are the same age. And so I've got in my margins, oh my gosh, they know each other. But that didn't occur to me until I was writing just a few minutes ago. And I don't know where I'll put that. I don't know if I'll even say that anywhere in the book. I don't know that that'll ever come up.
I can add to that, Darinda. There's pantsers and plotters. And if you've not heard that term before, the pantsers are the ones that write by the seat of your pants. And I think you're a pantser, Darinda, where you're not necessarily plotting it out. And Valerie, you might be that too. But there's the argument out there, are you a pantser or a plotter? And I think that we need to be both. I think that there are times when we just need to write something that comes to us in the grocery lineup on our phone and send it and put it in a file. And then at a certain point, when you've got all this stuff together, I now need to be a plotter because I have written, and I'm pretty sure for my theme of my memoir, I'm pretty sure that I've written all my mistakes with men and I've touched upon it. And now I need to sit down and look at this piece and this piece and this piece and go, does this piece go over here? Does this piece go over here? So at some point, then we become a plotter. And then there are some people like the Ian Van Deventer that I went to college with as a mature student that could write a paper the night before and get a top grade. And, he could plot and pants at the same time. So Valerie, maybe that might help you just give yourself a sense of peace of mind, and that right now it's okay to be in the pantser stage and just write it. And then when the time to plot comes, then there are techniques and methods that we can do that. So like Darinda just realized, oh my God, these two women know each other. Now she can plot that, but they've appeared by writing, just right.
And Rusty, I think I know that I'm both of these things, but as someone who most of my stories start from a pantser place. But I am prone, as are many pantsers, to want to be plotters and to take the lack of having a full outline as an excuse not to keep going. And that's kind of my point today, is that don't let your lack of structure keep you from writing your story. Don't think that if you're a natural pantser, don't try to force yourself into this plotter box to get started. And if you're a natural plotter, don't let yourself be so closed off by your outline that you don't let the things come that happen magically as you start writing.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. I'm glad I brought that up, because Darinda, you just added to that beautifully, in that we can't use that as an excuse to not write. And it's totally okay to not have the plot. And when we have the plot later, then we'll know exactly what to do with it. But there's this other author that I'm working with that I rarely encounter that in a book that's been published by a traditional publisher, that she's got plot and setting and character and tension and subplot. It's and she is just letting it come. She's letting it come. She's assigning herself to write. She gives herself writing time. So she shows up like you did for those 5 minutes a day. Show up. So we've got two people with hands here raised. We'll turn it over and see where we're going with the next question. Biffin, go ahead.
I don't know if this is necessarily a question, or maybe it is. So I could really thank you so much, Wei-Li, for sharing that, because I have struggled with this. Like, I'm not a writer, but something keeps like calling me to my computer to write, and I'm writing, and I've been writing for a couple of years now, and I am definitely in that more of that pantser place of where I just feel the need to write or capture the stuff. And it's to the point where I've had a difficult time going back and re-looking at my work and seeing, is there themes, and, can I plot this out? And I was almost going to use this format to just organize that and actually avoid, not take on the avoidance I've had around going back to look at any of my writing. So that's been there, and I didn't know if you had any tricks around that. And then the other thing is sometimes when I hear the protagonist and the inciting incident and all of that, the intellectual sort of language that comes along with like how you are supposed to write a story, I'm like, I don't know any of that. And I'm just like putting that out there. So I've noticed that that's definitely I'm like, what's there is like, should I be Googling this? Should I be writing this down? Where do I learn this?
So here's the first thing I would say is, if you write, you are a writer, and step into that as quickly as you can. You are a writer. You write, you're a writer. Doesn't mean you don't have to be published to be a writer. You're a writer. You write things. You're a writer. Are you hearing me? You're a writer. You're a writer. Okay. And I've heard what you write, and I can tell you from as a reader, you're a writer. You write beautiful things. And so that's the first thing. There are, as far as the jargon of writing, it'll come. It's just like any other new industry. If you're not in marketing and someone throws out the letters ROI, people are like, wait, what's that? It's return on investment. You don't know that until you get into marketing or business or entrepreneurship. It's just the lingo, and it'll come. And if there are terms you don't understand, sure, Google them or don't worry about them. There's no right way to do this. There are more expedient and less expedient ways to do it. And a lot of it also, and where Rusty's brilliance comes in, is one of the things a writer needs is a good editor. And so a good editor will help with the structure and the inciting incident and who your protagonist is, and thinking through all those things. You don't need to know all those things to write the story. They're there. You just don't know what to call them yet. And the other thing I would say is one gift a high school English teacher gave me was the idea of a zero draft. And she had us write not first drafts, but zero drafts. And what is a zero draft? It is when you just put it on paper. It is nothing. It is nil. It is zero. It is just getting it out of your head. And it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. You take your editor out, you take your inner critic out. It's your zero draft. It's nothing. It's just getting it out of you for the first time. And after that, you also, when you're doing your zero draft, you don't research. You don't stop. You just get it out. And so after you've got the first draft, then you can find the holes. Then you can edit for grammar. Then you can look at the structure. But just do the zero draft and get it out of you. And that's what writers do.
Mm-hmm.
And also when you're researching and editing, you're using a different part of your brain. So don't get your writing brain all gunked up with the getting more knowledge and the making it great.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No. And did you have an extra question, Bipin?
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. If you read books and you read fiction and you watch movies, and what person doesn't these days, you will just naturally know that there is somebody that is going to act against somebody else, and somebody is going to, instigate something. And you, like Darinda said, you don't need to know the names. You don't need to know the literary jargon. All right. So Michelle, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. Something that Darinda just said, I think it's Hemingway that is attributed with this quote of write drunk and edit sober. And I totally agree with that. Just write, let it flow out, and then edit with that critical, because I have that creative and logical sides. I like writing and math, so I totally relate to that. But my question was, with your book, Darinda, you said you put it aside in a drawer for about 10 years or so. And I've been doing a PR job for a decade plus now, and was in newspaper writing before. And newspaper writing was much more creative, and my kind of writing, like it was feature writing. So it was just so much more creative in the writing and the interviewing and all that. PR stuff isn't as exciting. And so I think I have not tried writing more creatively because of the job, basically. And I'm curious kind of if that happened to you, but then if also you needed this Ryan character, your book had to just sit for a while until you had the other elements.
Ryan came 10 years ago.
Okay. I wasn't sure when that happened.
Yeah, he was part of that first push. And as far as being in your creative mind versus not, all I can say is, I know everything happens in its own time. I know this intellectually, but looking backward, I wish that the years I was in the job that didn't fulfill me creatively, that I had taken that 5 minutes a day. Because the second I started doing it, I had forgotten how much I love these characters. I love this place. I love their interactions. I love this world and spending time with them. And that feeds my creativity. I wish I had let my actions dictate feeding my creativity rather than feeling like I needed to feel creative to walk back into that world.
I want to thank you, Darinda. That was awesome. And you know how many speakers have said, wow, I had this speech and I had this plan last night, but now after hearing you last night and this morning, it's like, I want to switch directions. This is why I have speakers come and be part of the community. It's wonderful. I'm so grateful that you came and that you honored us with your story, your writing, and your bits of wisdom for us. So everyone, thank you, Darinda.
Thanks, Rusty.